The wind screamed across the dead plain, hurling razor-sharp sand against her exposed skin. Kael'da staggered forward, each step a battle against the weight of her armor and the gravitational drag of this cursed rock. Her breathing rasped through a cracked rebreather mask, every intake tainted with grit. The sun, if it could be called that, blazed with a cold cruelty above her, draining what little moisture remained in her veins. Her second heart stuttered. The filtration pack blinked red. She was dying, and they had made sure of it. The memory flared hot through her chest, more painful than the cracked ribs, the moment Commander Vern had stared down at her through the escape pod's viewport. "A warrior who questions command is a liability," he had said, voice sharp as a vibroblade. "You should be honored. The planet's barren. You'll have time to reflect before you expire." Then nothing but the hiss of sealed airlocks and the roar of descent. No trial. No honor. No final rites. Just exile. Her own people had cast her out like organic waste. She collapsed beside the husk of her escape pod, half buried in blackened sand. Its comms were dead, and the power cell drained after 3 fruitless days of emergency scans. The thin strip of rations had run out the morning before, and her water recycler, jammed with grit, had finally sputtered its last. She rolled onto her back and stared up at the sky. It was the color of iron, veined with ash and haze, not a star to be seen. Her vision swam. Her fingers trembled. She wanted to scream, but her throat was a cracked well. Instead, she let the silence settle. A whisper crept into her mind unbidden. Maybe it would be easier to let go. Just sleep. Then she heard it. At first, she thought it was the wind again, another cruel hallucination conjured by her failing mind. But it came again, irregular and uneven. Not a sound made by the desert or the dying pod. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Kael'da pushed herself upright with a snarl, her muscles screaming in protest. The small blade at her hip, a ceremonial thing, dulled from age, was already in her hand. Her vision swam, but she fixed her eyes on the dune's crest, heart hammering in her throat. A figure emerged. Tall. Two-legged. Wrapped in torn fabric and sun-bleached armor plates. Dust clung to him like a second skin, and a crude spear rested on one shoulder. His face was hidden beneath a shattered visor, and thick leather straps crisscrossed his chest. A breathing unit, clearly handmade, clicked softly with every exhale. He stopped 20 paces away and didn't move. Her blade trembled. Her species had studied humans, primitive, overconfident, violent. She had seen dossiers. She knew what they could do. And yet this one stood calmly, watching her like a predator sizing up wounded prey. She bared her teeth. "Come any closer and I'll slit your throat." The figure tilted his head. A low, amused grunt escaped his mask. "Right," he said. "Nice to meet you too." His voice was rough, sandpaper over gravel, and strangely unconcerned. Kael'da lunged. Or tried to. Her legs buckled halfway through the motion, and she crumpled to the ground with a dry gasp. The blade fell from her fingers. She waited for the killing blow. It never came. Instead, the crunch of boots drew closer, and something cold pressed against her lips. A flask. Real water, metallic, stale, but liquid. She drank greedily, shame burning through her. The human crouched beside her, wiping sweat from his brow with a strip of cloth. Beneath the cracked armor, his skin was sunburned, scarred, and raw in places. He looked like he'd been on this rock for far longer than she had. "Didn't expect to find company," he muttered, glancing toward her wrecked pod. "Thought I was the only unlucky bastard dropped here." She coughed. "Why help me?" He shrugged. "Because you're breathing. That's good enough for now." She watched him stand and stretch, noting the fluid economy of his movements. This was a survivor, not the soft, over-touched humans she remembered from the diplomatic files. No drone support. No smart suit. Just grit, bone, and madness. She wiped her mouth. "What's your name?" He paused, surprised she'd asked. "Eli," he said. Private Eli Maddox. Terran Colonial Marines. Technically MI, though I doubt anyone's coming. Kael'da lowered her head. Kael'da Vren. First Blade of the Cerithian Command Corps. Or. I was. Eli gave a low whistle. So they ditched you too, huh? She didn't answer. Instead, they sat in silence beneath the scorching sun, the remains of trust flickering like the last embers of a dying fire. The wind howled again, but this time, it no longer sounded like a death sentence. Kael'da glanced at him from the corner of her eye. You built that breathing rig yourself? He nodded. Used parts from a wrecked drone and an old filter. Not pretty, but it keeps the sand out of my lungs. She studied him again. Crude weapons, improvised armor, skin darkened by radiation and sun. No soldier should have survived this long, not without equipment, backup, or a medkit. What are you? She asked, not entirely meaning to say it aloud. Eli grinned, just a little. Human, he said. Real stubborn ones at that. Kael'da stared at the horizon, where heat shimmered and dust devils danced like ghosts. Her wounds still bled beneath her armor, and her people had left her to die. But here, in the middle of nowhere, was something infinitely more dangerous than exile, a human who refused to give up. And for the first time since impact, she felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest, hope. Or maybe it was fear. With humans, the two were often the same. Kael'da's limbs still ached days later, but she could walk again, barely. Every movement tugged at the edges of her healing wounds, reminders of both her survival and the human who had made it possible. Maddox didn't talk much, and when he did, it was short, clipped, and always focused on the moment. Keep low. Don't touch that. Drink slowly or you'll puke. And once, with absolute gravity. If it moves and you didn't put it there, kill it or run. She didn't like taking orders. But she also wasn't an idiot. On her own, she would have lasted another 2 days. With him, she was still alive. They moved together through jagged canyons of rust-colored stone, slipping beneath arches carved by wind and time. Maddox had a sixth sense for danger. He would freeze mid-step and motion for silence, his body language sharp and exact. She learned quickly to mirror his cues without argument. On the third day, she tried to thank him. They were sharing a small fire in a cave choked with the scent of scorched lichen. She held out the curved ceremonial blade she'd nearly stabbed him with the day they met, handle first. He didn't take it. Keep it, he said, jabbing a stick into the coals. Might need it. I owe you? You don't. We're both just not dead yet. She stared at him. That's not how it works among my people. Good thing I'm not one of your people. That silenced her. Again. But Kael'da was watching him now, truly watching. His gear was mismatched, patched together with whatever he'd salvaged. His left pauldron bore the faded emblem of the Colonial Marines, but the rest of his armor had clearly been taken from other sources. Alien hull plating, shredded cargo crates, even bones, cleaned and carved into bracing. It should have looked desperate. Instead, it looked efficient. Functional. Like everything about him. One night, he took her to what he called the wall. It wasn't a real wall, just a narrow ridge of dark basalt that rose from the desert like the spine of a dead god. From the top, she could see for miles. The stars were finally visible, shards of cold fire against blackness. Below, across the dunes, something glinted, metal, faint and fractured. She pointed. What is it? Wreckage, Maddox said, voice low. I scouted it last month. Not much left. Some hull fragments, solar panels, and bones. Lots of bones. Cerithian? No. Other species. Don't recognize them. Someone else was marooned here before us. She stared at the reflection for a long moment. Do you think your people are looking for you? He shook his head once. They counted me dead the minute my ship dropped off sensors. You don't seem angry. I was, he said. Wasted a lot of energy screaming at the sky. Doesn't change the outcome. She considered him. You're resilient. He barked a dry laugh. That's what they say when they don't want to call you insane. Among my kind, resilient is a word for things that should not have survived, but did anyway. I'll take that as a compliment. Kilda folded her arms. I still don't trust you. Maddox nodded. Smart. You shouldn't. Silence again, stretched tight. But it wasn't angry or cold, it was an understanding. Two predators, too damaged to be prey, circling warily around shared space. They descended the ridge the next morning, moving toward the wreckage. Maddox wanted to salvage wiring to repair his makeshift water condenser. Kilda wanted answers. Both were too stubborn to turn back. Halfway there, Maddox stopped suddenly and crouched low. She followed suit instinctively. What is it? He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed. Tracks. Not theirs. Too wide, too deep. Fresh. Kilda leaned closer. Grav bike. Military class? Cerithian pattern. Thought so, Maddox said. His voice changed, quieter, flatter. You think they're here for you? No. He glanced at her. They're here for you. Her gut twisted. They came back. To clean up. Tie loose ends. Or maybe they want something from your pod. She stared at the tracks. How many? Hard to say. More than 2. Less than 10. Armed? Definitely. Kilda stood slowly, her pulse beginning to rise. They will not find me docile. Maddox looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. They won't find you at all, if we do this right. She blinked. You'd help me kill them? I didn't say that. He shouldered his makeshift spear. But if someone's kicking over rocks looking for trouble, they shouldn't be surprised when it bites back. She took a long breath. This was it, the central fracture of her life. Her own people, her own command, had come back not to rescue her but to finish what they started. The betrayal was no longer theoretical. It wore bootprints and carried weapons. And beside her stood a man who owed her nothing, who had every reason to leave her to her fate. Yet here he was, eyeing the horizon with a soldier's discipline and a survivor's patience. I don't understand you, she muttered. Maddox gave her that same faint grin. That's what makes it fun. They turned toward the wreckage together, weapons ready, not speaking again for a long while. But Kilda felt it then, something she had not felt in cycles. She wasn't alone. They watched the enemy descend under the cover of dust and silence. 3 skimmers, sleek and black, hummed above the cracked earth like predatory insects before settling near the ruins of Kilda's shattered escape pod. From their vantage in the rocks, she could see the figures disembark, Cerithian command elites, cloaked in adaptive armor, moving with precision and confidence. She recognized 2 by their gait alone. Commander Vern among them. Her fingers curled around the grip of her blade, the old ritual steel now sharpened to a deadly edge thanks to Maddox's whetstone. Rage simmered in her chest, low and cold. They hadn't come to retrieve her, they'd come to erase the mistake of leaving her alive. Maddox lay beside her, peering through a scrap of salvaged lens he'd rigged into a makeshift scope. His knuckles were dirty, white where they clutched his hand-carved rifle. A metal spike lay across his lap, coated with paralytic poison milked from the spined cacti that grew near the sulfur pits. Improvised, brutal, and entirely human. You ready? He murmured. Kilda nodded. You understand, if we fail, they'll not grant you mercy. He didn't look away from the lens. I stopped hoping for mercy a long time ago. They moved at dusk, when the air shimmered and visibility wavered. Maddox had studied the wind patterns, timed the storms. He knew when the grit would rise, when the static would kill sensors. He used the planet itself as a weapon. She followed his lead without protest now. He looped old calm wire into trip anchors, dragged camouflage nets across sharp rocks, embedded spikes and broken panels into sand-choked choke points. Every trap was crude, unrefined, and devastatingly effective. The first Cerithian to die never saw the trigger. A flash bomb filled with compressed sulfur and shrapnel ignited near his leg as he stepped between 2 rocks. The second fell moments later, screaming, dragged into a pit Maddox had disguised with nothing but dust and bones. Chaos erupted. Kilda struck from above, silent and fast, her blade opening a throat before alarms could even sound. They moved as smoke and flame, darting through confusion. She had trained with these soldiers once. She knew their drills, their arrogance. And now, for the first time, she fought not with protocol but with instinct, like a human. Vern didn't die easily. He caught Kilda's arm mid-strike and hurled her into the side of a downed skimmer. Her vision blurred. Heat lanced through her shoulder. She staggered, blades slipping. He loomed over her, rifle raised. Then a crack. A sharp, thunderous sound. Vern froze, then dropped, a crude iron spike protruding from the side of his helmet. Maddox stood 10 meters away, rifle braced against his shoulder, breathing hard. He lowered it slowly. Kilda stared down at her former commander's body. The rage was still there, but now it was tempered by something sharper. Closure. "I thought you said you couldn't shoot straight," she said. Maddox shrugged, reloading. "I said I'm not a marksman. Didn't say I was blind." The final soldier tried to flee. Maddox didn't chase him. Instead, Kilda moved with terrifying grace, her blades slicing through the wind. When she returned, her armor was streaked in blue-black blood, and her eyes were hollow. It was done. The battlefield fell quiet. Only the wind spoke, whispering over the corpses and wreckage. Later, as they sifted through the skimmers, Maddox found an active comm beacon. He tapped it once, checking the frequency, then looked to Kilda. "We could rig this. Set a false distress. Might pull in someone else. Or it could bring more of them." He gave a small smile. "Then we'll be ready." They worked side by side in the shadow of the wrecks, salvaging everything that could serve a future: fuel cells, ration packs, encrypted NAV drives. When they finally sat beneath the stars, watching a fire built from the wreckage of betrayal, there was no celebration. Only quiet. Kilda turned the stolen beacon in her hands. "I never imagined I'd survive this long, or that my survival would depend on a human." "You didn't depend on me," Maddox said. "You adapted. That's what saved you." She looked at him. "That's what makes your kind so dangerous, isn't it? Not strength. Not weapons. Just refusal to die." He didn't answer. Instead, he tossed another broken rifle into the flames and watched it burn. When the fire had died to embers, Kilda activated the beacon. Not to call the Cerithians. Not to plead for forgiveness. She encrypted it with a rebel code, a signal she'd once buried deep in a dead channel long ago. A call to those who might still believe in honor. Or revenge. Message sent. They boarded the last functional skimmer just before dawn. "Where are we going?" Maddox asked. Kilda narrowed her eyes at the rising sun. "Someplace they won't expect." He adjusted the controls and leaned back with a grunt. "Good. I hate easy." The skimmer lifted from the sand in a thunder of wind and static, rising higher, away from the grave of her betrayal and the proof of his survival. Together, they vanished into the burning sky.